calls me and he's panicked and he's going, oh my God, she's already gone. She can't sign anything.
Hi, welcome to My Divorce Real Estate. I'm Amber Gifford, and I'm so excited today because I have a guest. This is Mary Jean McArthur with Providence Title.
Hi, Amber. I wanted to say thank you for inviting me. I'm a single mom because I'm a widow. So I know life can get really overwhelming sometimes. So I'm hoping that some of the information we go over today helps put some people's mind at ease, or at least helps them get on the right path.
Absolutely. And for those who don't know, and they probably don't, I'm going to age us for a second. We worked together 18 years ago in title. So I know, but we look really good. So, so today we're going to be talking with Mary Jean about the basics of title. We want to kind of dumb it down for you a little bit because everyone's like, oh, I got this email. Like, what do I do with a title? Like, what is it? What do I look? What's Schedule C? So let's kind of quickly go over the basics that people need to know.
Well, what's really scary is sometimes when I send the email out with the title commitment, it doesn't even get opened. And I know that because I get a little feedback thing that says nobody opened it.
They're watching.
But it is important because the title commitment actually tells you about the transaction and what needs to happen before you can close. So the first thing is Schedule A on the title commitment. It is actually a commitment to issue an insurance policy. So Schedule A tells you who all's involved in the commitment and the transaction. So the buyer, the seller, the actual legal description, the lender. So if you're a buyer and you get the commitment and it's the wrong lender, somebody needs to say, hey.
That's not my lender.
Yeah, that's not my lender, so change it.
Schedule A.
Yeah, Schedule A. And for the seller, who's vested in title is important because especially in a divorce situation, you want to know, was your spouse taken off a title? Do we need to work on that? So that's important. Schedule B is all those things that are not covered under your policy. And even the lenders get confused about this. It's things like easements or, maybe there's an antenna in the back 40 of this property. All those things that are not covered under the title policy.
And should they be reading
No, not really. You want to look on Schedule A, make sure your names are correct and that kind of thing.
Schedule C is an escrow assistant.
Yeah, and then Schedule C is the most important part because Schedule C tells you what is in line in order to get closed. So it'll be things like we need a payoff for the seller's mortgage or somebody didn't pay their taxes, so there's an IRS tax lien. Or maybe, sometimes it's something really simple too, like if the property's in a mud district, a mud district notice has to be filed of record. So, and we do that as part of the closing. But Schedule C again lists all those things that need to be taken care of prior to closing.
So something that and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're had a divorce and then your ex-spouse owed child support and they did not pay it, it would show up in
Schedule C.
So that's important to know, right? Because you got to deduct that money from the proceeds. Yeah, so that's divorce related. It's very important to be looking at Schedule C.
Exactly. And then Schedule D is just kind of an informational thing. It tells you who the insurance companies are and how we're splitting up the premium. It's really a technical schedule. It's not something that you need to even worry about.
Nice. That's awesome.
That's kind of just dumbs it down. Of course, there's a lot more involved when you're trying to clear those items in Schedule C, and that's really when you're expecting a phone call from me.
So when you say clear, we're talking about, and I know you've heard us say this before too, you have a clouded title, something that we always want to do a pre-search for if we can, and at my preferred title company, we can do that. So we want to check for clouded title to see if there's some bad spot on there, correct?
That's correct. And normally a title commitment, once we have a signed contract, can take anywhere from 3 to 7 days. If there is a divorce, though, it can take up to 10 days. And that's because we have to actually order a copy of the divorce decree from those records, which is
So
separate from the property
that brings
records.
me to my next question. So if you guys are going through the divorce, but it hasn't been finalized or filed in the county and you're in temporary orders, that's something that you would be asking
Yes,
for as well.
absolutely.
Who's getting the home? Whose asset is this? How is it being divided?
Exactly. We have to have those temporary orders as well.
So if you have the temporary orders and you're working towards the decree, but it hasn't been filed, that's sufficient.
It is sufficient in that we can contact the courts and see how close they are to finalization. As long as both parties are going to sign off on the sale and the money is split according to those orders, then we're good. But if anything changes, then the court needs to acknowledge
Right.
those changes.
So it's really important to stay on top of all of this. So that's kind of the basics of title insurance, just so you know what you should be looking for. But one of the things that I really wanted to go over was how, the misconceptions in regarding divorce, which we did talk about the clouded title a little bit, but it is scary when you are going to sell a home and you're unaware, like maybe you were awarded the home and it's been 10 years and you decide you're selling it and then there comes up a glitch on there.
Right.
So let's tell them about a scary story or a way to recover from
Well,
it.
probably one of the most scary stories I've had in a divorce situation was regarding this guy, Joe. I'm not going to use his last name. But
Sorry, Joe.
Yeah. Joe's contract came to me through an agent that I do a lot of business with, and it turns out that his grandpa gave him down payment money for his house right after college. It was a graduation gift. And being a finance major, he was like, I'm on it. He bought a house right away. And that was way back in 2002. And around that same time, his girlfriend from high school had moved back to town because she graduated from college, and they kind of got together, rekindled their relationship, and then they got married in 2003. Well, 8 months into the marriage, they were like, wait a minute, we're not the same people, this isn't working, and they had a very amicable split
Nice.
in 2004. I mean, it was like they weren't together that long. They realized...
those are real.
Yeah,
You
those
can
are
have
real.
amicable splits.
Yeah. So they just kind of went to a mediator. They didn't even hire attorneys.
Right.
And she knew that he had bought the house before they even got back together. She didn't want any part of the
So
asset.
separate property.
It was separate property is what she was saying. But she had lived there and she had participated in the payment of taxes and
she had
insurance.
equitable interest
So
in
she
the
had an
home.
equitable interest. So, but anyway, life goes on. They separate. Well, Joe finally meets this girl, Sarah, 6 years later. They date for a long time. They get married in 2010. By 2020, they have 3 kids, and they've well outgrown this bachelor pad, right? And Sarah's like, we got to sell, we got to move on. And she calls the agent that I've been working with for a long time and says, hey, we just need to get out of this house. Well, Sarah knew that the guy had been married before, but she didn't
see
know
where
all the
this is going.
details. And so, no big deal, right? We get the title commitment back and the marital status from the seller, and Joe says that he's been married before. Well, and the dates don't line up. Even though he bought the house in 02, he was married in 03, he divorced in 04, but for some reason, Jill never signed any documents stating that what her interest was in this property. The mediator wasn't told about the house
Ooh.
because it was
knows
such an
why?
amicable deal. And Jill and Joe decided they weren't going to tell him about it because it wasn't an issue.
And he was
in
probably
their
thinking
mind.
it was separate property,
Right.
so why does it even matter?
So
Holy
then
fire
what
protection.
happens is I'm trying to find Jill because she has to sign something giving him title to the property so that he can sell it to his buyers on the contract. And yeah.
So you're like a private investigator because you do have to find these people.
Exactly. And Joe was very, very helpful. He was able to locate this girl's older sister who still lived in town. But everybody else had kind of, Jill had moved back to Arizona, which is where she went to
Wow.
college. So he finds the older sister. She tells him, oh my gosh, Jill just passed
Oh, I
away
knew
last
this was
spring.
coming. That's
And
terrible.
I don't know what to do because, we haven't done anything with her estate. Mom's still devastated.
Wow. Bet you weren't expecting that one.
Yeah. So at that point, Joe calls me and he's panicked and he's going, oh my God, she's already gone. She can't sign anything. How are we going to deal with this? Are we going to have to go back to court? And my answer is no.
Yay.
Just so you know. So as it turns out in Texas, if someone dies without a will, and then we go by the Texas property code, and in Texas, since she was never married again, she didn't have any children, her property goes half to her parents and half to her siblings. That's the rule. So in this particular case, her dad had already passed on, her mom was alive, and she has 4 sisters, and they are scattered around the United States.
Wow.
So we're having to do an heirship affidavit for them to sign, and the mom to sign, that will basically say, no, she never had any interest in this property, no big deal. Well, the other issue that came up, because this took a while, probably 30 days for us to track everybody down.
How long did this extend closing?
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, the IRS filed a lien against Jill because she hadn't paid her last 2 years' taxes. And of course, the family didn't know that because she's in Arizona. They don't talk about taxes. And so now the estate has to file, her last tax return and pay the IRS because IRS federal tax liens attached to properties. So it gets very complicated. So the point of my story is, had Jill and Joe just been honest with the mediator and told him the truth about the property, and she divested herself of all interest at that time, it probably would have been the best situation because it really truly was his property. He was the only one on the mortgage. It wasn't like she was protecting her credit.
She wasn't even on the deed.
She wasn't even on the deed. But Texas is a community property state. So once you're married, you automatically get part ownership of everything that your spouse has.
And I know we did another video on this as well. It just depends on how long you were married. It's the equitable interest in the home. You can watch that video for that one. But that's the ultimate scary. We have a divorce, we have a death, we have a new marriage, we have heirs, and then we have tax liens.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important to have title insurance and to make sure you can check for a cloud of title before you actually even go through with a divorce decree, so everybody's aware of everything. So one last thing, and we'll be quick. What is your recommendation? Should you go to an attorney to close who doesn't look for title, or should you go to a title company?
No.
I already know the answer.
I mean, I'm biased because I work for a title company, but I can tell you that in my 20 years experience, we have had many, 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 many situations where an attorney that has handled the divorce is also trying to handle the sale of the property, and they are not real estate attorneys. So technically, they really don't know all the ins and outs.
Right.
And if there is no title insurance, the new buyer is not protected and the new lender is not protected. So most of the time, they can't use their divorce attorney unless they are what's called a fee attorney with the title company. Because the lender requires title insurance too. It's not just the owner, it's the lender.
So note to self, we always talk about having your team of people. You got to have your experts with you so everybody knows what's going on and divulge all information. Thank you so much for letting us come in and film and just getting together and educating.
Oh my goodness, it's so good to be able to put information out there because it saves people so much hassle when they're trying to navigate. You're already in turmoil.
Yeah, and it's emotional.
If you
hard.
just have the information, it makes it easier to kind of find your way out.
Right. And that's why we do this. So as always, thank you for watching, and we're here to bring you real life experiences to all your real estate needs.